Piracy and griefing. So I'm scrolling through Spectrum, which in and of itself is sometimes an amusing or frustrating distraction. And I see this thread by Shankers talking about let's not let piracy become griefing. What is piracy? What should piracy be in Star Citizen? Let's construct an ideal, or let me do that. You have a number of people in your org. Some of you get together on one ship, two ships, or three ships, and then you spread out and you start looking for viable targets. The targets shouldn't be presented to you. You shouldn't have a known location. You shouldn't have something that is easily found in game. Rather, perhaps you've been watching a few YouTube videos and you know, oh, hey, here's a great spot to mine for this. Well, that might be a great spot to watch as well if you're a pirate. Hey, here's a great cargo run between this place and this place. It'll make you a lot of UEC real quick. Well, maybe that's a good place to put a quantum interdictor. Things like these are the skills that should be required. That should be what sets players up for piracy. Now, in the thread, we're talking about pad ramming and spawn camping and other forms of griefing. This isn't piracy, not even remotely. And in fact, I would argue that it's not even the fault of the players doing it. The reason why they're doing it is because they're bored and because they can get away with it, because the game doesn't have all the necessary pieces in it to make something like pad ramming ridiculously expensive. How are you getting your ship back for insurance if you're suiciding your ship into a pad? Who would issue insurance to someone who destroys these things on a regular basis? There gets to a point when you simply can't insure that anymore. That's really the big problem in Star Citizen, is that Star Citizen isn't really a game in the sense of what it should be. Star Citizen is kind of like an oversized battle royale. Oh, you log in, you do this, you do that, you do the other thing. Oh, you kill a few guys, maybe you get killed, maybe you're king of the hill for a while, then you die. Log out, log back in, start all over again. That's more or less what Star Citizen is. There's no real consequences. Your character doesn't die. Your ship is always going to come back to you in a relatively short amount of time. What we need in the game is pirate game loops, which require systems to be put into the game. Now, some of those systems are going to arrive in 3.18. Like soft death, the ability to take cargo, the ability to salvage the hull of a ship. These present not only interesting possibilities for industrial players, but for pirates as well. Imagine being able to salvage a ship and take its cargo. That sort of thing. That's piracy. That's what piracy should be in Star Citizen. You should be out in belts looking for players, hunting them down, using your sensors, trying to track them. Perhaps even having an interesting mechanic like we've talked about in the past, where you're listening on your sensors for the electronic emissions of ships out in asteroid belts. And it's an imperfect environment. There's a lot of interference, so it requires a certain amount of skill. Maybe a dedicated player on your ship doing that whilst you are out there searching and looking for targets. It shouldn't just be a gimme. But we don't have that. We don't have a lot of the connective tissue that makes something like that work. So what do you get? You got people just sitting out of Korea. You got people sitting out at whatever station. You got people camping launch points, people ramming people on pads, because they know they're always going to get their ship back, but they're kind of bored looking for things to do. And that really is the core problem, is that while many of the pieces are moving onto the board, the connections, the things that tie these things together, the systems that punish you for destroying your ship too many times, for not being careful, aren't there. It's one thing to say that, Star Citizen is an open world PvP game. That's cool. That's fine. But when you have devs from CIG saying, oh, well, like we kind of leave these things in place because we want you to rally your org and rally your friends and fight back. Your org may not always be there. Your org may not all be playing Star Citizen at that time. Your org may be off somewhere else, doing something else, and you're kind of on your own. Without having the right set of consequences in the game, and I don't mean consequences in terms of completely shutting down gameplay, but without having the right consequences for people who sit outside of stations and just camp landing pads, the entire system breaks down. It doesn't make sense, and you just get this kind of degenerate gameplay. And it's there, and I don't even really blame them. It's there and it exists because they have nothing else to do. They have nothing to chase after. They have nothing to build up because they know, well, all my stuff, anything I build up in the game, whether it's money, whether it's guns, whether it's ship components, it all just gets taken away eventually because, well, we got to do another reset. So there's nothing to chase after for these players. There's nothing to do but spin your wheels and just sit around and just blow things up and wait for this game to actually receive the care and attention it deserves, and not just to be an afterthought while Squadron 42 is, coming out of the pipe. And that's really the problem here. The problem isn't, the so-called griefers. It's the fact that the griefers have nothing better to do. I mean, if the game to you is fine, if you just want to go out and harvest asteroids or run cargo from point A to point B, and that's just the joy of the game for you, then that's fine. A lot of your pieces are there. But for the larger community, a lot of these things just simply don't exist. In a way, Grim Hex doesn't make a lot of sense, because if Ninetales are running Grim Hex or whoever it is in the lore, if you think about it, this is where they make their money. This is where they have a black market where goods can be traded, no questions asked. This is obviously something that is going to make them a lot of money. Now, if players are sitting outside of the stations shooting each other or killing random players who are trying to fly cargo in or fly cargo out, that interferes with the Ninetales' ability to make money. So you may not be pursued by the police out there, but the Ninetales might come after you. There's a whole host of reasons why the current state of the game, especially piracy, is quite terrible. And I think it's really just far too easy to just sit there and say, well, it's these griefers. It's because it's all they have to do. And they're bored. In order for these things to kind of get to a point where we can seriously start to look at gameplay and call this griefing and that not griefing, there has to be, just as there has to be cargo for the cargo runners, mining for the miners, and salvage for the salvagers, there needs to be piracy for the pirates. Whether it's NPCs or players, it has to be there. They have to be able to go out, take an entire cargo, then return, sell it all, and then be able to make a profit doing that. And it has to be worth their while. They have to be able to make real money at it. But it's also something that's going to require a little bit of skill and a whole lot of effort. It can't be easy. And that really is the problem. Is that it sure is great when we get a new ship, a cool new ship that comes into the game and whatnot, but what we really need are game loops and mechanics, and we just don't have them. We have little kind of facile tier 0 implementations of things, But the real effort, to tie things together and to make things meaningful, we've got reputations in game, and what does that get you? Not a whole lot. Oh, you can earn money and you can buy ships in game, but you don't get to keep them. You can buy weapons, don't get to keep them. People are looking for things to pursue, looking for things to do. Maybe you could do things in the game that give players something to chase. It doesn't have to be money or weapons or whatever you think you might need to balance in the future. Why don't you look at some of the ship skins that you're selling? Or, try to make some better ones that are worth chasing and give players achievements or things to chase after these, so they have more important things to do rather than just sitting outside of a station spawn camping easy kills. But, once again, that will require effort. And I mean, in the ship skins department, that is one of the places where CIG is heavily derelict, because one look at most of the skins that are available for the ships in game, and they are pretty bad. I mean, I used to think that the ship skins in Elite were kind of easy peasy, but the ship skins in Star Citizen are just awful. I mean, they're really bad, with the exception of the Pirate Caterpillar, which is just an outlier. But most of the other ship skins just look pretty terrible. But what if we put a little effort into these ship skins? And yeah, you can put a few on the store to make a few bucks for the game. Nobody's gonna hate you for that. But at the same time, you could put some in the game that are worth chasing after, that are worth going after, and give players something interesting to do, and something that they can look at and say, oh, that is worth earning. That is something worth chasing. Realistically, when you look at this sort of stuff, you have to understand that this isn't the product of, socially misaligned individuals with just who are just mean, just a bunch of meanies. No, it isn't that. This is just a bunch of bored people with nothing really substantial to do that is going to last beyond the next reset. When we had things like the Pirate Caterpillar, we had things like the Glaive that came into the game and you had to go and do something in the game to earn them. That was worthwhile. That was great. We need more things like that. We need more things to pursue in Star Citizen, in lieu of actual character progress, because we don't have all the systems in place, and maybe we don't want to start promising characters wealth when we're not sure what everything should be worth in the final version of the game. Okay, cool. But players need something meaningful and rewarding to do. And this is just what happens when they don't have that.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels.